I'm live. No matter what I do, I always have to adjust this thing. So Lord's been speaking to my heart for some time now about speaking on something that he put on my heart called pitching your tents toward Sodom. And if you know what that is in regards to, or if you don't, basically Abraham and Lot, Abraham was Lot's uncle, so Lot would be his nephew. Oh, look how smart I am. Were traveling to a new land, and they had an abundance. The Lord had blessed them with servants and cattle and just family, all kinds of things in large amount. And that large amount caused for some issues. There were just too many. There was conflicts and things happening, and they didn't want to fight anymore. So they decided, or Abraham decided, it was time for them to part ways. So he looked to the left and looked to the right, and he saw these two places that they could go. And he, being an amazing uncle, allowed his son Lot, or his nephew, excuse me, Lot, to choose first. So Lot looked left and Lot looked right. He saw the well-watered plains of Sodom and Gomorrah, and he chose to go there. And Abraham went to the other place on the outside. Not as lovely, not as easy, maybe takes a little bit more work. But that's where he went with all of his good and his family and what he had. And Lot went and pitched his tents towards Sodom. Now on the outskirts of town, they were doing fine. Maybe they, allow me a little poetic license here. Maybe they were growing their own vegetables and, raising their cattle and making their pottage and whatever other things they ate, and were very self-sufficient. But then maybe Mrs. Lot wanted to go into town and see what kind of robes they had in town and see if they could maybe trade some of their cattle. So they headed towards Sodom just to do some business. They don't live there, it's just business. And so they went into town, and they got maybe they got their dry goods or their fabric or whatever they got, and then that wasn't so bad. They went back out of town, and it wasn't long later that she thought maybe he thought, I'd like to try some of this dinner with some spices that come from this land. I wonder what they have. Let's run into town and check their spices out. Maybe they did that, and maybe this time Lot ran into somebody who was kind of a nice guy, and he spoke and buttered Lot up and was like, Lot, you're a pretty wise man. I'm thankful we have you around here. And Lot got a little puffed up. Maybe he thought, you know what? It takes quite a journey to get into the city. Maybe we should pitch our tents a little closer. So they moved their tents a little closer. And then, before you know it, they're right at the edge of town. And little by little, they're spending more and more time there. And maybe his daughters by this time are married, and some of them, and maybe they've married men from Sodom and Gomorrah. And obviously some of this is just major poetic license. At this point in time, Lot has become a gentleman amongst people. And I believe the Bible says, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, I believe the Bible says he's a judge amongst them. Someone who holds some position in this city of sinners and wickedness. And it's a picture of sin and wickedness and wrong choices is what Sodom is in the Bible. And so he's got his family, and he's got, from my understanding, 4 daughters and 2 son-in-laws. I could be wrong, but this is just where I'm thinking right now. And so he's, at this point in time, they're pretty much in the city, okay? And Abraham's off in the land that, is a little bit harder to take care of, a little bit harder to maintain. And, sometimes it is a little bit harder to maintain in our lives out in the harder area that's the safer area that God would have for us. It's not always easy to be where God would have us to be on the outside, but it's definitely the best choice. And so he did his best to flourish there, and he did well as well. Well, the Lord came to Abraham one day, and he said, I am going to destroy Sodom and Gomorrah. You need to get Lot and his family out of there. Or he said, I'm going to get Lot and his family out of there. And so Abraham, at this point in time, he was trying to save the city. He knew it was something that his nephew loved, and they had family there, and he said, you know, peradventure, you know, maybe, what about if 50 people are good and righteous in this area? And the Lord said, I will spare it for 50. And he's like, well, peradventure 30 and 40, or 40 and 30 and 20, you know, all the way down. And he's like, peradventure 10 people were good in this area, are righteous. And he said, then I will not destroy the city for 10 righteous people. Well, there were not 10 righteous people to be found. If you think about it, Lot and his wife are 2. Then he has 4 daughters. And I'm gonna say 2 son-in-laws. So that's 8 people. And he didn't even have all of them coming with him. He didn't any longer have any spiritual influence over the people in his lives. When he escaped that city, there were 2 daughters, his wife and him. And the Lord warned him, do not look back at this city. I am going to destroy it. If you look back, I'm going to destroy you. You don't look back on the things that you're leaving, the sin that you left. You don't go back on it. Well, Lot's wife was well entrenched in the love of the sin and things in this area, and she looked back and was turned into a pillar of salt. So Lot escaped alone with his 2 daughters. His other 2 daughters did not come, and his 2 sons-in-law did not come. He didn't even have influence over his whole family anymore, because he had pitched his tents toward Sodom. He had changed his standards, allowed things into his life that maybe God wouldn't want in his life, to make things easier, to satisfy his flesh in the family, and no longer had a spiritual influence the way that God would have him to. And an entire city was destroyed because of it, because he chose to pitch his tents toward Sodom. So it just makes me think, often in my life, especially recently, the things that we've been through, how much easier it would be just to pitch our tents toward Sodom. How much easier it would be to just give in. And I'm not going to say we haven't had weak spots and weak choices where we shouldn't have done things in these hard times. But thank God he's got a redeeming power and grace, and allows us to just come back to him and restores us again. It's pretty amazing. But I will say that the more you pitch your tents towards Sodom, the less influence you will have for the Lord. So that's something the Lord's really been working on my heart with lately, just trying not to pitch my tents towards Sodom, to look for the easy way out and the better things in life, and instead pitch my tents in the direction that Abraham would, and do my best to honor the Lord even in the hard times. Thanks, guys.